We'll do it live.
Okay. No.
We'll do it live. Fuck it. Do it live. I'll write it and we'll do it live. Fucking thing sucks.
In 5, 4, 3.
That's tomorrow, and that is it for us today. I'm Bill O'Reilly. Thanks again for watching. We'll leave you with Sting and a cut off his new album. Take it away.
Greetings, my fellow Krakoans. Welcome once again to Days of Future Podcast, the show about all things X-Men. However, you're probably noticing a very, very significant difference. For the first time, you're finally, we talk all the time about how sexy we are, how just like stop people on the streets, and now you finally, look, we're no liars. We're willing to put it out there. This is so welcome to our first ever live, well, not live this time, but we'll get there, but our first ever video podcast. I'm Trev.
I am Joe. And so to our audio listeners, things will be relatively normal for you, but we figured with the content that we're delivering today, we wanted to give a visual option.
Yeah.
And honestly, like, we've had a lot of magazines calling us about they're like, you're too sexy to be hiding behind microphones. You're the two most handsome podcast hosts. So,
well, no, since we started this in 2015, Joe, how many times have we had to turn down people when they say, hey, we want to give you both dual sexiest man alive? We're like, no, I can't. Like, Ryan Reynolds doesn't have much else going for him. Need to make sure he gets it. Blake Shelton, what's that? Come on.
Okay, but we kid around here. We are sexier than Blake Shelton.
Yeah, I think it's
well. And then when,
but you know what? To be fair to Blake Shelton, very, very funny, charismatic guy. I get it, but I mean. But look at this.
I mean, seriously. Idris Elba, when he won Sexiest Man, was like, hey, I know you guys have turned it down again. What if I join the podcast as like a third? And we said no. We said no. Because we didn't want his career would take a hit if he was put up against us every episode.
Yeah, we've got too much of a good thing going here. We don't want to throw a third factor in that. Like Idris Elba.
Because you are like, you're the American Idris Elba. Right.
I have been called that,
yeah. The songbird of a generation, and the American Idris Elba,
and too old to play James Bond.
That one's true, though.
That is true.
That one's accurate. But
it's probably a shock for our listeners to see for the first time. Yes, we are two white bearded men that host an X-Men podcast. I know that's very, very surprising.
Yes, most podcast hosts don't look like us. Okay. But I don't know. It's interesting because I know your job is on Zoom quite often.
A lot of it. Yeah, not as much anymore. Last year it was all on Zoom. Yeah.
My job, I do a lot of Zoom meetings, and so I'm really comfortable now on this sort of platform. Which, like, if you would have said like 3 or 4 years ago, doing something like this, it would have been like, how does this work? But now, honestly, I can't stop staring at myself. I've never looked at anybody else in any sort of virtual meeting.
It is strange how quickly we all did get just used to it. Yeah. And there was that thing of like getting used to it, then getting like sick of it, and then kind of for me it was just kind of coming back around and being like, no, actually it's fine, and it has been a great way to stay in touch with people you don't otherwise see. And then even in the podcast realm, you and I don't typically have guests too often, but I've heard other podcasts talk about how they were operating under this mentality of, well, we have to have all our guests in person. Yeah. And suddenly when podcasts realized you could move to like Zoom and this online format, suddenly you have way more guests that are potential too, because it doesn't matter where they are or what time it is. So,
well, yeah. And it's made just the idea of, I have a scheduled time that I'm going to chat with you. And then when I hit leave, I can decompress right away.
Yeah,
that's been a strange thing. Some of my meetings have started to become hybrid with more people in the office lately, which is where I'm at right now in the middle of the day. But I figured I go on rants about the X-Men during my normal meeting hours anyways, so it's really not that different. But like the meeting ends and I'm like, oh, you're still here. All of you people are still here. I need to like sit back and think for a minute. So I actually kind of like the virtual world, but it's the way it is.
Yeah. I mean, hey, this is my first time seeing you in quite a while. Actually, we've been doing
That's
the show
true.
completely virtual for a couple.
Yeah,
of years
we don't
now.
have our cameras turned on. We
don't.
So it'll be interesting. You know, I'm a little jealous. Trev is, for those little audio listeners, he's rocking an X-Men sweater that looks very good. I still have to work around this, and I didn't think that my Jubilee shirt would go over well in the professional environment, which maybe that's on me. I don't know.
Yeah. But I am sacrificing for our art, because I will tell you, it is too warm for this one.
I was gonna say
it's but I didn't have an X-Men t-shirt. And I was like, well, you know,
we got a weather report.
Oh yeah.
How's it by you?
It was surprisingly cold yesterday, but today it's I think it's probably the case with you as well. It's starting to warm up here.
It snowed
I know.
all week, and it sucked. And you know, I just want to say that if you don't live, you know, in the Midwest, you should be thankful. It's the worst place in the world to live, and I mean that. No caveats.
No, there's nothing else going on in the world anywhere that is.
There's nothing else in the world. No, this is it. This is number one. Now, this is the point of the podcast where I say these reviews do not inflect my employer. These are all based on me. We've got a big show today, right? We got a big show, really big show, as they say.
Big show, yeah.
So we got the Elite Eight of our March Madness going into April thing. But I just wanted to check in because we've got a big event coming up in like 2.5 weeks. That is the Multiverse of Madness, the return of Doctor Strange, Professor X, Scarlet Witch. I mean, we might have to do a betting show with some stakes beforehand, because we might.
You talking about is Tom Cruise going to be there?
Is Tom Cruise?
Is James McAvoy going to be there? Yeah.
Who's going to show up? We're going to see some Ryan Reynolds. You know.
Yeah.
I don't know if we can make that commitment now. I'm not ready to make that commitment yet, but I am excited. Where's your hype level at?
It's decent, I'd say. It's interesting because I was just talking to some friends the other day, and Joe, I don't know how you feel about this as well.
You having friends? Not good. I don't feel good about it.
No, I know you're just surprised by it as well, but I have not been enjoying Moon Knight. I don't know if you've been watching it at all. It's like
the first episode.
Yeah, I personally don't think it's been very good so far.
You thought it was going to be a sequel to Before Sunset. You thought Julie Depley was going to show up.
Well, I thought it was a Before Sunset Inside Llewyn Davis crossover. What I got instead. No, it's just I won't get into my issues with it. But between like that and I don't know, like I did enjoy No Way Home, but I wasn't as over the moon with it as everyone else was, you know.
Over the Moon Knight with it, yeah.
Yeah, and I just saw Everything Everywhere All at Once, which was
no spoilies,
no spoilers, but incredible. Like it's one of those movies where all the hype you've heard, it is actually completely justifies that. You know, it's like, oh my god, everyone's saying it's one of the best movies there. It can't be, right? Then you watch it like, oh no, it is. It's something revolutionary and groundbreaking.
Damn, I can't wait.
And like what that movie was able to do with the multiverse made me kind of realize how pedestrian the other multiverse stuff we're getting is from, you know, other from DC and Marvel.
Yeah.
So that said, there's like a tempered level of excitement, but I think what I am mostly excited about for Doctor Strange is not necessarily the continuation of Doctor Strange's story, but as you said, it is going into it wondering what surprises does this movie have for me? Like, are we going to get Tom Cruise? Are we going to get Deadpool? Are we going to get other X-Men characters? And even like what kind of, you know, there's a rumor about there being an animated universe that might even be kind of fun if they have the guts to do it. So like story level, I'm at a weird place with the MCU. This is what I want to ask you, your current kind of feelings on the MCU, because I realize I am kind of checked out on it to a certain degree, to where it's not, and I don't think I'll ever be one of those people that's like, they just need to stop making superhero films. I never get that. Like, whatever, we make more superhero films. I don't mind. But I will say it's hard for me to be very, very excited anymore. They can't really feel like events to me much more anymore. You know, between the TV shows and 3 movies a year now, it really is hitting, and that's just MCU. But there's a point where every time one's coming along, I'm like, all right, you know. So I'm glad Doctor Strange has the extra hook of like some maybe surprise cameos, because otherwise I don't know. You know.
They still have me in terms of X-Men stuff. Like, are we going to get a little tease, right? Are we going to see, is there a silhouette of one of the X-Men in No Way Home, or what's it called? Homecoming. What's the newest one? No Way Home?
Multiverse of Madness? Oh,
no, Spider-Man.
No Way Home. Yeah.
No Way Home. See, that's the problem when you have like fun titles like that. They all run together.
Yeah, remember when movies just had numbers and it was great?
Yeah. Kids these days don't know what it's like to have Scream 5. It's a bad example.
Well, no, that movie was. They don't. You're right. That movie wasn't called Scream 5. It was called Scream.
What? The newest one was just called Scream.
Mm-hmm.
Wow, is Courtney Cox in it?
Yeah.
Is she playing Monica?
She no. Oddly enough, she was playing her character from that Bruce Springsteen video.
The guns fire. Yes. They still got me hooked on that. I also I'm also a little dead inside, right? Mm-hmm. So I don't really have that magic in my life about anything per se, save for this Mountain Dew that I've been drinking. This for your
what flavor you got over there?
Oh boy, this is 0 sugar, obviously. My body's a temple. Raspberry lemonade. It's called Spark. Let me show it to see. This is for all you visual listeners, the vloggers right now, right? You get to see it. It's tasty. So I'm not really super excited in general about stuff. Even like Endgame, like I hadn't seen Captain Marvel or Black Panther until like right before Infinity War. Like I watched them just the night before. So I've always, I think for the last, I don't know, decade, I've been trying to like keep up with it. But I can see where people have kind of fallen off because Endgame was such a hit. I agree with you that like I enjoyed the nostalgia of No Way Home more than like it needs to be Best Picture.
Very fun movie, yeah.
But that's kind of what I think as I age, as you can, you don't look at
day over. No, Joe, you don't look at day over 60, I'd say. So
yeah, I'm 60 years old. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So thank you. I'm keeping my hype in check where I'm just like, oh yeah, okay. Oh, is it May? Is it coming out in May? Oh wow, that is coming up. Like I didn't even realize that it was this soon until I saw it.
I'm also keeping my hype in check just because there's always the level of what if we don't get any of these cameos we talked about? Yeah. What if Tom Cruise isn't in it? What if Deadpool doesn't show up? What if it's
that's what I loved how you keep referring to Tom Cruise as if he's a character. Yeah.
I mean, if you just say Iron Man, people are going to think, but yeah, I think we talked about this last time, but like I'd say my two biggest hopes are Tom Cruise's Iron. Now forget about World Peace. Tom Cruise's Iron Man, and then Chris Evans as Human Torch. Those are the two things I would want to see the most.
Yeah.
But I guess I should like. It's weird too because I should feel more excited because it's Sam Raimi coming back to Super.
You're a big Sam Raimi guy.
I am a big Sam Raimi guy. Yeah.
I like Sam Raimi,
and I'm like, it's that thing where I have that worry of him. Just is he going to be able to make a Sam Raimi movie, or is he just going to have to follow the Marvel formula? There are some Sam Raimi looking shots in the trailer, which gives me a little bit of hope. But yeah, I'm going to see.
Who, is it Sam Tappert or Rob Tappert?
Rob Tappert.
Rob's the brother who's in it, right?
No, no, you're thinking of Ted Raimi. Yeah. Ted Raimi's his brother that he puts in everything. Rob Tappert is his producing partner.
Okay. Yes.
I mean, we already know Bruce Campbell's going to be.
Bruce Campbell's definitely
confirmed.
He's already said it. He was even talking about like some of the reshoots. It's like Bruce.
Yeah. Come on, Bruce. He actually did you see on April 1st? He put up like an April. I'm sure it was an April Fool's joke, but because I think Bruce Campbell knows how this all works. So clearly he's messing with people. But on April 1st, he put up a picture of him in the makeup trailer, and it was him being made into like a version of Doctor Strange. He had like the Doctor Strange goatee and everything. And I was like, well, that would be pretty cool, but I'm sure that was just him messing around.
What's your favorite Bruce Campbell character?
Ash. What do you?
Straight up Ash, because that's your first. That was your first exposure to him.
It was. Probably. I mean, I might have seen some movie that had like a small role in, but I took note of. I'm one of those weirdos, but I think this is actually fairly common for like my generation. I saw the Evil Dead movies in reverse order. I saw
Army of Darkness first.
Saw Army of Darkness in the theater first, not knowing because they didn't market it that way. They didn't tell you it was Evil Dead 3. I just thought it looked like a fun adventure movie. I begged my parents to take me to see it because I was pretty young, and they're like, "What?" And then we all ended up liking it. But then I remember going to the comic book store, and somebody in the comic book store going, "Oh, have you seen the other ones?" Huh? And then having to go back. And then my local video store, only had Evil Dead 2. So I rented that, and then a couple of years later, I think I finally saw Evil Dead. But yeah, it's always been Ash. My heart is with Ash. I mean, there's other. I really love the show Jack of All Trades. Briscoe County was great. I think maybe one of his best performances is Elvis and Bubba Hotep. But yeah, I'm an Ash.
So for me, like I grew up on Xena and Hercules.
Okay,
right?
yeah.
And so is it, what was it, Autolycus? Is that
Autocules or something? Yeah, it's like the thief, right?
The thief, and I loved him in that.
Yeah,
I loved him. And then my brother was like, he's like does these Army of Darkness, Evil Dead movies, and so then that led me into those, and I was like, oh wow, this is cool. Like I remember watching the VHS Army of Darkness. I think I watched Army of Darkness and then 1 and 2 Evil Dead.
And he's a hometown boy for us. He's a hometown hero. Do you remember when you were young and you got into that? I remember at the time being like, because you didn't at that time, I was like, what? People from Michigan can like make cool movies too?
Yeah,
like,
him and Sam Raimi. Like,
yeah, that was kind of mind blowing at the time.
Yeah, and like people in my school were like, oh, my aunt babysat him, and like I remember when Evil Dead was being made. Like I had a teacher who knew him and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So
I remember going to meet him at a book signing when his first biography came out, and I went to meet him at the Borders Books in Dearborn, and meeting him and him being like, "Where are you from?" and me saying Canton. And for those, so you and I are both from Canton, but for listeners, they're probably like, "Huh?" Because like
Plymouth. Thank you.
Oh, sorry, you're right on that border. Sorry, you're very, very close though. But when I said Canton, you don't expect anybody to know Canton or Plymouth, really. People know Ann Arbor, people know Detroit, But Bruce Campbell, being a local guy, when I said Canton, he's like, he knew where that was, right? He's like, oh yeah, that's just kind of like you go down Ford, or like he exactly knew. And I was like, well, that's crazy to think that someone,
our claim to fame
those years knows your hometown.
The most famous person we have 2 famous people from our hometown.
You're talking Plymouth now?
Well, Canton, Plymouth, Canton. So for those of you who don't know, it's like they're basically the same town. Katie Holmes' sister. So that's Tom
How does
Cruise.
that work? How is Katie Holmes' sister from our hometown, but not Katie Holmes?
She lives here now. She moved here.
Oh, okay.
Because they got married. Her sister got married here, and Tom Cruise, when he was married to Katie Holmes, because they wouldn't shut down one of the major roads for him to enter the wedding hall. But she used to show up all the time. You'd see her everywhere visiting her sister. She probably still does. And then Neil Patrick Harris's husband. I think he was there when you were there, and us too.
Yeah, were you working at Borders the day Neil Patrick Harris came in?
I don't think so. No,
you heard the story though, right?
Yeah.
So Joe and I met working at a Borders in the Canton, that's what I'm talking about, and Neil Patrick Harris walked in one day, and this was I'm not even sure, it might have been pre Harold and Kumar even, perhaps, because it was definitely not Harold. Okay, so it was post that, but it was definitely pre How I Met Your Mother, because like the whole like Neil Patrick Harris Renaissance hadn't happened yet, because in fact you had that kind of thing of people like looking like, is that Doogie Howser guy? Yeah. And one of my biggest regrets in life, I think I've talked about this maybe before, I don't know if I've ever talked about that show, but none of us wanted to bother him, and I in retrospect now, seeing all this stuff with him post and realizing how friendly and how nice he is, I'm sure he would have been fine if I'd come, especially at that point. I'm sure he would have been fine if I came up and said like, dude, I love Starship Troopers, I loved you in Harold and Kumar, but I was just like,
Undercover Brother.
Yeah, I'm always so good at that, but I didn't want to bother him, and I regret that I didn't bother him. It's a nice way to put that.
What could have been? You could have been.
I could be hosting this podcast with him right now.
He would be a good arcade, by the way.
Oh, you're not wrong. He would be a great arcade.
I knew. I almost spent way too much money on an arcade action figure last week.
I did the one that's at GameStop. Is that?
I think so. I don't. Yeah, I think it was at GameStop. Oh, I almost did it.
Did you see the newest Matrix film?
Mm-mm.
Okay, so Neil Patrick Harris is in that, and he's excellent. Yeah, he's great in it.
He's good in Gone Girl too. Like he's he gets his he gets his money from How I Met Your Mother and kind of being like a pop culture icon now. But
he was good in that even. The show went off the rails, but that's not on him.
No, I still like the show, so I know you're a hater, but and I'm watching How I Met Your Father. Yeah, I'm watching it.
All right, how is it?
It's comfort food for me. Because it takes place in the same universe. There are crossovers, and
they're like they live in the apartment or something, right?
Spoilers.
Oh, okay. Fine.
Spoilers, but yes, that's the first episode.
Okay.
And then three characters show up.
I know two of them. I already know two of them. I know.
Okay, spoilers for How I Met Your Father.
But yeah, I know Kyle MacLachlan shows up.
Yeah. And
Wow,
then a character associated with him also shows up.
Okay, and then Robin showed up, correct?
Shabatsky, so this is my favorites. Love her. Yeah, it's a fun show. It's comfort food. Like, it's not.
I'm almost tempted to watch it just for the captain, because we're talking about like Kyle MacLachlan. What a career! That guy has played 3 of the all-time best TV characters between Agent Cooper, the mayor on Portlandia, and the captain. That's just like what a holy trinity right there.
And that's not even talking about his film work.
Mm-hmm.
Right, Blue Velvet.
Yeah, Showgirls.
Yeah. What were we talking about?
X-Men, I think.
See, there's no editing here. We really do get confused, and we just kind of go, what were we talking about?
Yeah.
Anyways, Bruce Campbell, Doctor Strange, it's coming out.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Somewhat excited, but not really, keeping levels in check. You're not over the Moon Knight about Moon Knight. That's fine.
I mean, it really is. I think for both of us, partly this just has to do with our show as well. Lately you and I've been kind of struggling to think of what's the next episode about. I think we're both just like, can we finally get to the X-Men? Because like that's going to be the saving grace of this podcast as well. When we finally have like more X-Men content, like MCU X-Men content to talk about.
Hey, we got plenty of content. Okay.
We do if we had more time to read. I think both of us would love to do a little bit more like rereads of old stories.
I know.
Like, maybe this summer will be better because I won't be teaching in the summer. Maybe hopefully we'll calm down a little bit for you two, but you two, the band. I mean, not and also you,
which I'm in.
Mm-hmm. You're the guy who takes Bono's hat from city to city, right?
I do. Yeah.
Do you know that? Do you know that story?
That there's a guy who takes Bono's hat.
There was a story that Bono, they were on tour and they got to like whatever city they're in, and Bono realized his favorite hat hadn't made the trip for some reason. And the story goes, that's an urban legend. I don't know how much true.
Wait, let me stop you right there real quick. Mm-hmm. Did he go, I still haven't found what I'm looking for? Is that what he said?
I'm sure he probably did. And then like, it was like high-fiving everyone, you know? But the story goes that he had an assistant go get the hat and then paid for a seat on the airplane for the hat to just sit on the seat so that it wouldn't have to go through luggage or wouldn't have to go into a carry-on case or anything. So the hat had its own seat on the airplane.
Do you think was it his cowboy hat? What like?
I don't know. I don't know like what hat. I don't know if it's wouldn't it be great if it was just a top hat? Mm-hmm. A fancy top hat. He was putting on the Ritz.
Putting on the Ritz. So, all right, we don't want to belabor the point too long. We got a top 8 of Mutant March Madness. A little recap. We had 4 brackets. Mm-hmm. One was of X-Men characters, X-Men villains, young X-Men, and then X-Men side characters, so not necessarily core team. And we had 2 winners from each. And what we've done is we've then randomized those 8 into a final bracket. And I'll tell you right now, there's some heavy hitters meeting in the first round. Mm-hmm. And there's also some, I don't know, it's going to be interesting to see.
Now, before we get into it, Joe, mm-hmm. can I just briefly address some controversy?
Yeah.
Light controversy.
Yeah.
There was a couple comments, and I actually get where they're coming from. And I think you and I can just kind of speak to this. There was some comments on Facebook, on our Facebook page with our wonderful listeners. A couple expressing dismay that in a tournament of stylish X-Men characters, Gambit was not included.
Was he not?
He was not. Yeah. But to we can like by Joe's expression, you can tell that might have just been an oversight. But I will say to be fair, you and I actually did have a couple like back and forth exchanges about like who was in the tournament.
Yeah.
And there was kind of a moment where you just realized there are kind of too many characters. And there were a couple that were left out that I think like we talked about, like Bishop was also not in there.
Yeah.
In terms of like, because we were talking about just like the stylish design. I think I even mentioned that in the tournament that I was disappointed that we didn't have Herman Glob in there.
Yep.
Martha would be like a cool one just because that's like an interesting look. So I think
you kicked Dupe out. I had Dupe in and you.
I did kick Dupe out actually. Yeah. So we actually had to make some tough calls, and I think there was kind of a consideration, and we might have even mentioned this in the last episode, that maybe that means we can do another one of these and ultimately have the winner of this go up against the winner of that.
Yeah.
So
there's enough characters to do.
Yeah, don't worry. There are more than 64 characters in the X-Men universe, everyone. So
yeah. That's funny. I definitely remember when we were recording last time, remembering some names and being like, ooh. Gambit, though, I don't remember Gambit, which is sad because Gambit was also in the news for his new Hellfire Gala outfit. I don't know if you saw that. I saw he was trending on Twitter because he was flashing some nips.
Yeah, it's interesting that we are finally recording this episode right at the time where all the new Hellfire Gala costumes are coming out.
Yeah, Marvel paid us to do this.
Yeah, this is paid content. That's true.
Yeah. So this is the do you want to go over the bracket now, like the full bracket, or do you want me to just?
Well, yeah, let's at least remind people of who the top 8 are.
All right, so I'll say it in alphabetical order. All right, our finals are Cable, Cyclops, Domino, Magik, Mr. Sinister, Mojo, Storm, Warlock. Okay, those are our final 8.
And to remind everyone, like I just wanted to remind everyone, like what this is even kind of all about is we call this, like, you know, stylish X-Men characters. And to us, that doesn't only mean costume, although obviously that's a big part of it, but it means, you know, like the variety of your costumes over the decades or years and how like cool all of them look together. But also just how like well designed you are on the page, you know, like you wonder like what, like Mojo doesn't necessarily have a costume. I think we were just both taken with, there comes a point where we say, hey, for what this character is supposed to be, what they're supposed to represent, do they look the part? And I think we're like, well, if Mojo's supposed to be this disgusting, scary villain, look at that, you know? So a few things kind of go into our consideration about this.
And per usual, the tiebreaker is who would win in a game of, as Trev loves to say, b-ball. I don't know if you saw that comment.
No.
We had a comment that said, it was like, for the second year in a row, Trev just calls basketball b-ball way too often, more often than he should. And I was like, he loves b-ball.
I'm now that I know someone brought it up, I'm never saying the word basketball again. It's only b-ball from here on.
He's a b-ball man.
Did you guys see the new b-ball game last night?
I love it. So I think so. Normally in the final 4 we agree, but now that we're doing final 8, are we gonna divvy up the responsibility, or are we just gonna come to terms together?
I think we could come to terms together. Okay. Yeah, and if worse comes to worse, if we can't decide, maybe we just go the old coin flip.
The old coin flip. Okay, so I randomized the seeds.
First of all, Joe, let me just say right off the bat, very, very impressive first slide.
Well, I was trying to figure out what's the easiest way to show these, and I was like, PowerPoint is the best way to show these. So yes, there's some really good graphic design. It's a passion of mine. So our first matchup is Warlock, as you can see his name on screen here, versus Cyclops. Okay. So first we're gonna take a look at some Warlock designs. Okay. Here you have a pretty early Warlock appearance. Actually, it probably his first one, and more modern one. As you can see, not too much has changed, but man, Warlock, he's got a lot going on. He is. I know we talked a lot about last time. He doesn't necessarily have a costume per se, but the lines, the ability to kind of turn into anything, it's pretty unique.
Yeah, you don't change that design. Like you said, he hasn't changed very much because it's kind of, you got it right off the bat. And one thing you could say about Warlock, that there's a couple other characters, I think maybe this can allude to, but some that I would say this is not the case, but there's no other character in comic books that looks like Warlock. You know, Warlock is one of the most unique, interesting designs of all time. And I think just the visual alone of Warlock is a large part of what has kept that character beloved and consistently returned to over the decades. I think it's just, you love seeing this character.
Here's some other more where he can kind of get more cartoony. You can see with his eyes here, or his mouth, and we've seen him turn into he's almost like a Shmoo, the old cartoon. He just kind of you need a motorbike. Oh, here he comes.
Yeah, or a little. I remember, I was trying to find the picture. Remember, he turned into a little airplane. So consistent, no costume though, but unique, definitely. All right, he's going up against Slim, Cyclops.
Now here we got the 90s look. We've got the like cool boy band type look, I would say.
Grant Morrison's new X-Men run.
Yep.
Yeah.
The X. Now, do you think they made those jackets?
Do you think that the X-Men made the jackets? Or
No, I mean
like
Marvel should have made them for like merchandise.
They definitely should have. I probably would have. I'm nerdy enough that I probably would have got one.
Yeah, but I don't think people like us would look cool in it.
I was gonna say, like, look, by the way, look how like sexy like Cyclops looks in that middle picture.
Yeah,
right? Like, yeah. I
he's
don't know
gotta-
that we would have rocked it exactly the same way. But
Like if we had that haircut, we would look really stupid. We'd look like I don't know, like some sort of like the nerd in a 90s sitcom.
yeah.
Yeah. So what I like though, so in these three pictures, you get, Cyclops, his design always needs to cover his eyes, right? That's something that I don't know would be a hindrance to artists, but it's definitely something that is unique about him. I think he's probably someone who has to be drawn a lot, so it's not like Warlock. Warlock's appearances are not as often as Cyclops, right? So they need to keep reinventing Cyclops. And to have something like that 90s iconic look, right, that you're seeing on the left there, is pretty great. And I'm gonna skip to the next one here. You've got his like 70s and 80s looks on the side, and then that just like what I would consider iconic look now of the hood visor.
Yeah, that's like kind of that's like the anti-hero terrorist version of Cyclops there.
mhm.
And I've always loved that suit. I've never really understood. To me, I don't understand the practicality of that because it's kind of hard to figure out how would like ruby glass work and like
Wouldn't it
most of the
stretch
fabric
out,
hood.
right? Like when it get loose, like
I never like it's one of those things you just accept it on the page, because
Yeah.
it like looks so great. But I at the first time I saw it, I remember just thinking like, wait, how does that work? Is that like part of the fabric? And if it is, do they have to make a special kind of fabric that's up, so like, but whatever the case, it just looks great.
Yeah.
I think that is actually that center image there is maybe my favorite Cyclops costume.
I think so too. I'm a sucker for the 90s though. And then when they try to do it in the movie, like that like one final shot, it like made me really question, is this something that could even be in real life? Sometimes there's certain costumes that on a page look cool, but like if you get like an actual like designer in real life to like create the fabric, they'd be like,
I mean, I'm not to be mean or anything, but I will say, look at that physique. Ty Sheridan is not necessary.
Hey Ty, if you're watching this, you're not big enough. Not for Trev, not for me.
The thing I did like about the 90s design, there's some things I kind of don't like about it. Because it does have like, it's got the 90s kind of like almost to a cliche point now, the pouches and like the chest like straps. I never really understood the point of it, but I kind of do, even though I said my favorite, so I'm going to contradict myself because I said my favorite is the terrorist version.
That one.
Yeah, right there. But the thing I like about the 90s is that it doesn't have like the cowl. Like it just has like, I think
you want to see the hair.
Rock that haircut, buddy.
Yeah. All right. So now this is the hard part. We got to decide who's got more style, Cyclops or Warlock. Do you want to give I'll give my initial thoughts.
Sure.
My initial pick, due to the longevity of having to reinvent yourself by being the leader of the X-Men since '63, I'm going to go with Cyclops on this one. I personally think having enough looks to be that iconic that people would remember is difficult. I think it's probably closer than people think, but I would go with Cyclops.
Yeah, last time we talked about how, look, at the end of the day, sometimes you just have to admit that all these matchups aren't going to be fair. And that's fine because that's the way the actual March Madness is. Sometimes you just have an advantage in some way. And I think ultimately the advantage for Cyclops here is that we have a variety of imagery to see and a variety of costumes, all of which have their strengths. Each of them, it's like there's something unique and kind of cool about them. And Warlock, as awesome as the design is, actually, I think it does hurt him in his competition at this point, that he's just always Warlock. Yeah. Great design. I love it. but it's kind of cool that every year or so, every 2 years, we get like a new Cyclops costume, and you see how people had to kind of reconfigure like how does the eyepiece work, and how much do we want it to look like the classic Cyclops costume or evolve it in a certain degree. And yeah, I just think I'm with you. I think this is I really do like this Warlock design a lot. I'm very, very happy he made it to the top 8, because I don't think he often gets thought of in that conversation, and I think he should. But Cyclops is iconic for a reason.
So one thing that speaking of like different illustrators and designers taking on a role, what I always like to see, as you can see in the left and the right picture on here, is how the optic blast is shown, how that's stylized, right? Because that's such a big part of him. That I find it really fun. Like even in this 91, is that smoke? We know that this is a concussive blast, not a heat one. But
we know, the makers of the Fox movies do not know.
Well, that's true, especially because didn't he like heat up popcorn in a?
He definitely like there would be like fire after he would like use the blast.
Yeah. So, yeah, that's another element of Cyclops that I enjoy. All right, so welcome to the top 4 Cyclops. Our next matchup is Cable versus Magik.
Okay.
So we're going to talk about Cable here. You've got, to talk about pouches, you've got probably that middle one is probably one of his more well-known ones. The one on the far right here is his Messiah one, right? Where it's just, it's just him. Like there's no pouches or weapons really shown in the design. Obviously, right off the bat, there's a few things that stand out for Cable. One, he's got gray hair. There's not a ton of older X-Men, right? So I mean, that's a style in and of itself. You have his glowing eye, along with his scar on his face, and then his half his body with the techno-organic virus. Right, and in all 3 of these, you can see that. But another element of Cable that I think probably a lot of designers have to put time and attention to is his weapons. Right, he's someone who uses guns, right, which is definitely not something that a lot of superheroes do.
I like that in that center image, it looks like his gun has that like red cap that all toy guns are required to have on them now. And then I know you put this in here as a spoof. I didn't put it as a spoof. I think it is one of the most iconic images of Cable. Like that's not like when you look up Cable, this one does pop up a lot.
Yeah. So what we're seeing here is Cable with about, I don't know, 8 weapons strapped to his back. This is from Extinction Agenda, right? This is when he's going to confront Strife. Yeah. And he's got tiny feet. He's got lots of pouches.
It's the Rob Liefeld classic. Yeah.
He's just very top heavy. And it's very 90s. It's very 90s.
It is very 90s. That's the thing. You say I put this in as a goof, but I will say to Cable's defense, earlier I mentioned something how, you can go from liking something to then being like, oh, we were talking about Zoom. I said like the kind of the wave of the, that imagery is almost the same, where it came in the 90s and probably everyone's like, oh, that's just so cool, right? And then we got to a point of it became very, very mocked and very made fun of. But I think today you look at that image and there's kind of like a charm to it, of like a reminder of how overly ridiculous and excessive the 90s comics were. Yeah. So I actually don't mind that image anymore. I actually think that is like a funny image, but funny in a good way now.
And then this last image, one of my favorite things is that you sent the PNG, but it was a fake PNG, and then I was like, do I include it? And I said, yeah. So I think we've all been tricked. Excuse me, I'm not going to edit that out. Just to let everybody know, I do sneeze. Okay, it happens, people. The PNG background, we've all been tricked, thinking, it's transparent, but it's not. But this is a cool look. It is the same as his father, similar blue and
that's what I like about that one.
Yellow.
I was really trying to find, I don't know if you remember this, there was a time in the comics where everyone thought Cyclops was dead, and it was one of the few times where Cable was on like the main X-Men team, and he wore a costume at that time that the neck piece was made to look like Cyclops's visor, like in tribute to his dad. I always thought that was like a really cool look, but I couldn't find a great image of it in the time I had.
Okay, so we're gonna move to Magik, of course. Here we've got the Demon Child Magik in the center. Each one here is kind of showing off the Soul Sword look. I know
That's
you're
the one on the left is her when she was a member of the Phoenix Five from Avengers versus X-Men, which I can't remember. I'm not sure if you ever got to that in your like reread, or no, you didn't get to that point. Okay.
No, I didn't.
I thought all the Phoenix Five costumes were very cool, and I really liked hers. And then on the right, obviously, would have what I would say is kind of more standard, you know, kind of modern day
bicycle shorts, bare midriff, real battle ready. And then you've got some more soul sword designs with her, and the middle one right here has got the teleportation, which is, you know, similar to Cyclops, another thing that they have to design when thinking of Magik, right? And then you've got her blue and yellow X-Men colors on the left here.
They're like new mutants, kind of, you know.
So no, I know she's one of your favorites.
She was one of my favorites, and I know Cable is one of your favorites. So who knows? Let's see what happens. You want me to go first this time?
Yeah, go ahead.
I think this is actually fairly tough because you made a great point a moment ago about Cable, where he's thinking how, you know, just the fact that he like looks older, he's got the gray hair, and I think, you know, when you go back in time and try to remember why was Cable such an
go back in time, Cable.
Why was Cable such an immediate phenomenon in the comic book world? You know, like he showed up in New Mutants and really took that book over to the point where then they had to like turn New Mutants into X-Force, and just like the Cable hype at that time. Like I remember this more than you do, Joe, as being a little older, but it was like insane. Like that character quickly became like the most popular thing around him.
Yeah.
And I think there is something to be said that he just doesn't look like any other character in the X-Men universe, especially at that time, right? The idea of like a gun-toting, old, grizzled kind of soldier, that is a really unique, cool look. With Magik, I know there are often jokes about the fact that she doesn't like, you know, she's supposed to be the ultimate badass warrior, but as you just said, she's got the exposed midriff and everything. But there's just something that to me is also kind of instantly iconic. There's just something very, very visually unique. Like you and I talked a lot in the last time about silhouettes of characters. I think the little two, you know, headpieces that she wears are very, very kind of, they just pop. They pop in silhouette. And she looks as like interesting and intimidating and otherworldly as a character like Magik should, because Magik, the whole like run of Magik has been, she spent so much time. She was a little girl sent to Limbo and basically grew up her entire like, you know, young adult life in Limbo, and she still has not quite mastered being among us in the real world. You want a character like that to look kind of otherworldly and maybe, you know, not just kind of. That's why I think the one on the left, that when she wears just a New Mutants costume, it's almost kind of like, that doesn't feel right to me. At some point. Yeah, no, go ahead. Sorry.
I was gonna say, so like one thing I mentioned about Cable was like the weapons, but you know, Magik has an iconic weapon that sticks out, right?
Yeah.
And that's what you want, like in a character, is something that can really really sell somebody. You know, like when something happens off, like Wolverine, when his claws come in off panel, you go, oh, it's Wolverine. When that sword pops through, you know, okay, Magik's showing up, right? And that's part of her design. That's part of the style. And it is, you know, both of these characters, I think, actually are some of the success stories of breaking through design-wise in an otherwise really difficult thing to do. Like if you're not one of the core folks, it's kind of hard to do. But these are two characters that, you know, really, you know, forced the hand and kind of made them either get their own team or show up a lot more. So
yeah, and I think for what this is worth, and I think it is worth something when you're talking about designs and style. When I go to a Comic-Con nowadays and you go through Artist Alley, one of the characters who most artists have done prints of for sale is certainly Magik. Like a very, very popular character to like, you know, and obviously a lot of that is like the sexy prints and everything, but it's just, there is something very, very appealing about that costume. So I'll give my verdict, and here's where actually my logic comes from. I think it's not just a matter of which character I like more. I think ultimately it's a matter of which visual style appeals to you more and what it's more indicative of. I think with Cable, obviously he's a very militaristic character, and that's often how he's depicted. And when I see Magik, what I think of is, Joe, are you aware of the artist Frank Frazetta, like the famous like fantasy artist?
Yes.
Like that kind of imagery, right? Like when I see Magik, she looks like she should be like airbrushed on a van, like in the 80s, right? That kind of like cool. And that just appeals to me more. Like you said, the large sword, how she has this like modern medieval look, the sorcery kind of, you know, earpieces. So I am going to choose Magik. I just think, to me, she speaks more to what I like to see more on the comic page, which is a more kind of adult fantasy kind of realm.
Yeah, I get that, and I think Magik is great. I think I prefer Cable in his design. I love the accoutrement that comes with Cable, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think that last episode I talked about how I love making my video game custom characters look like Cable, right? I love the glowing eye, I love the scar, I love the battle hardened look, the gray hair, the metal techno-organic arm that changes from artist to artist.
Mm-hmm.
And
let's go back to Cable while you're talking.
Yeah, story wise, you know, that is what's unique about him, right? You could say, you know, he's under a bit more control of it here and not, you know, at other times, right? And I think he's someone who's gone through a couple different styles of looks and has a better color palette, I'd say, too, than Magik's, which is very you know, black and white. You know, with the burst of the blonde hair, right?
And to speak to your part, we haven't even mentioned it. Let's not dismiss the coolness of the glowing eye and the very, very iconic scar on the other eye. Like,
yeah, I think that's great, right? So to me, I'm going Cable, which, hey, stalemate. This is what happens. We got to send it to B-ball.
Okay. We're
going to the B-ball court. Now, here's the interesting thing. Cable has telekinesis. Magik has teleportation.
Yes.
Both.
She's also younger.
LeBron James is one of the oldest players in the league right now. So
yeah, and he sucks.
I think I asked this last time. Name 2 other basketball players currently playing.
Steph Curry.
Okay.
Let's see. B-ball players. God, I'm trying to think of like who are like the good white players right now. There's got to be a couple, right?
Jesus Christ.
Well, no, because like you're trying to hear about them because like it's always like a point. Like, wow, this guy's like.
I'll give you a hint. They're European. Then they're not. Yeah.
Well, Darko doesn't play anymore, right?
That's correct.
Yeah. Okay. I figured he was done.
Same draft as LeBron though, so similar age.
Yeah. I don't know. You're probably going to name a few now, and I'm obviously going to be like, oh yeah, I've heard that name. But as Joe is exposing right now, I'm not a basketball aficionado.
Hey, you said basketball though.
Yeah.
You are a b-ball aficionado.
I am a b-ball, bocce ball.
Yeah. Oh yeah. When you know where this is about basketball, right? Not bocce ball.
Oh, that's okay. Now I see. That's how I got confused.
That's the b-ball.
Yeah. Oh, now this whole tournament is invalidated because every time I picked a b-ball winner previously, I thought we were talking bocce ball.
All right. When it comes to basketball, though, this is really close. What I will say, though, and I'm going to give it to Magik here, is because she has the John Stockton short shorts. You don't see a lot of metal arms in the NBA. You do see some short shorts. And so because this is a stalemate, and I think Cable could have defeated some of the other folks on this list, I'm fine with picking Magik.
Okay, yeah, I kind of agree. My b-ball logic would be different in just that, you know, like Shaquille O'Neal aside, I don't. Oh, Shaquille O'Neal, he's like long retired, but I said he's long retired. But him aside, I don't think of basketball as a bulky, stocky person's game. You know, I think you want to be kind of lithe and.
That's why I don't play.
Yeah. So, and I do think teleportation is hard to beat in a game like that. If you can just teleport the ball consistently back into the hoop, then.
Yeah. Great point. So just so you know, I'm trying to think of some NBA players you might know. Would you know James Harden?
Yes, I've heard the name.
He's got the big beard.
Okay, yeah, of course. This guy, like the famous GIF of him. Doing
yeah. Kevin Durant. He's the guy who cried, and his meme is "You the real MVP."
Is he the guy that played Kimi on Lost?
Yeah.
That's Kevin Durant, right?
Yeah, same guy. It's the same guy. He just changes his name. There was already a Kevin Durant.
He was the Blob. He was the Blob in Wolverine Origins.
There was already a Kevin Durant in the Union, so he had to switch to Kevin Durant.
Yeah.
Same guy though.
Like Vivica Fox and Vivica A. Fox.
Yeah, same thing. Okay, all right, easy. Congratulations, Magik. We've got mentor-mentee the next round of Cyclops versus Magik. Next up, we've got Mr. Sinister versus Storm.
Oof.
Yeah.
Wow.
A couple of heavy hitters.
Yeah.
Mr. Sinister here. We've got, these are two of the more recent versions. We've got Caddy, Bar Sinister, and then Hellions. Let me tell you what happened, Sinister. Similar structure, but you could kind of see in the design, you can have a little bit more fun. And then over here we've got the more Sinister. On the right here we have probably the classic one.
Yeah,
right?
like
With
Sinister
the
Prime, right? I think, yeah.
Yeah, so that in the bottom left, those are both like his iconic kind of shredded cape with the big collar, diamond chest, little Leave It to Beaver type hair. Was that Eddie Munster? That's who it was. Eddie Munster type hair. And then more of the I don't know if you call it like Castlevania Gothic type.
The reason I include that picture for a very, very particular reason, because I think the other two images we see here, like you said, like the classic Sinister, was the only Sinister look for a very, very long time. Like when you thought of Mr. Sinister, you thought of that. And I remember that there came a point where they started to do kind of like more like background stories of him and like history stories, and then presenting him this way where he would wear like really nice fancy suits. And I think that was the moment where the artists finally realized, oh, we can actually do more with him. Yeah. We've also heard since, we've actually heard Chris Claremont, talk about how his initial conception of Mr. Sinister was actually that he was meant to be what a young child thinks a supervillain should look like. That was his planned reveal for Mr. Sinister, was that he was like a mental projection of Gambit. Gambit was even like, there was gonna be like a young child who was like creating Gambit, Mr. Sinister, essentially. Yep. And Gambit was what he thought like a superhero should look like, and Mr. Sinister was what he thought a supervillain. But once they were able to acknowledge that, oh no, he can also like wear like fancy suits and look very dapper because he comes from like the 1800s and things like that. Yeah. I think it unlocked something new for artists and writers to be like, oh, we can actually do more with him. And that's when he suddenly becomes this like catty, fashion obsessed supervillain. And it doesn't, he still wears a costume that is evocative of this original costume, but it's slightly different and a little bit more stylized.
He's someone, I think like I'm trying to like think of a character. There's like characters on shows or movies who are just kind of there, but they're a fan favorite. And then they're like, we should really promote them to a series regular. Like they should get some more backstory, right? And that's, for 20 years, 15 years, he was this like what you see, the classic look. And like you said, they were like, what, we can do more. And hey, listen, he's a powerhouse just as a character. And so, focusing on his style though, he's also got some style, right? You got the pale skin, you got the diamond, always have a cape for the most part when he's on the clock, I'd say, right? So yeah, he's got some good looks, especially with the most recent kind of, last couple years, Sinister. But oh yeah, and then here's this one more dapper Sinister. Storm. You look at these three right here. Oh my gosh. Look, the color palette on these to go with it. You've got Mohawk Storm in the leather like sleeveless jacket. You've got Mohawk Storm though in a more of a like a jumpsuit, like a suit, a cat suit, if you will. And the mohawk kind of goes into a mullet a little bit. And then you have more of I don't know when this one's from. The one on the right.
It's fairly recent.
Yeah, but you have more of her suit with a cape and the like an outlining yellowish line for Storm, with hair in a ponytail, a very regal long ponytail. And then here you've got the 80s Storm with like the cape that is attached to the wrists. You've got the silver. You've got that silver, right? Silver
gray,
silver's gray suit from the 90s with the little hoop cape, and then the Cloud Storm cape from one of the more recent showings with more of like a dark cloud cape and her hair looking like a cloud, which is just like, I mean, that's just more modern digital technology, I think, than anything. But standouts for Storm is her hair, and not only the style but the color, right? This white hair. That's like, has there been another person of color with white hair that people don't automatically go, oh hey, Storm? Like, isn't that like the idea now when you see it in pop culture.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't want to be the person to put in this work to do this, but it would be interesting for someone to go back through like the years and decades of X-Men comics and start counting this up. I have to imagine Storm is the character who's had the most costumes. Like when you do an image search on Storm, as I did to find these, you are just faced with a plethora of choices, and it just seems like artists love to redesign Storm and love to give her like new looks. And I think it's because everyone really is attracted to their take on that very regal, instantly like powerful. You and I said multiple times in the show that Storm is a character, and her look is a large part of it. She seems like the type of character when she walks in the room, everybody stops and goes, well, we got to pay attention to her. You know, and every time she's a leader of the team, or like as we now know, the regent of an entire like planet, you just buy it because you're like, yes, she just looks like royalty. She looks like she knows what she's talking about. She always looks great. I don't know if there's ever even been like this is what's kind of crazy. When I was going through the images and looking at dozens upon dozens of Storm costumes, I don't know that there's ever been a miss. You know, there's just something about Storm where I don't know. She has such a cool iconic look that she really brings out the best in artists. I feel like almost all of her costumes look great.
And I think and this is not necessarily a criteria for this, but I want to bring it up. I think maybe even compared to like visually, her look has gone into pop culture, right? To like where people know Storm and her looks into a pop culture sense, right? Like people get that. And I think that's we've talked about this before in this next MCU version of Storm. Like if they nail it, holy shit, like it's gonna even be more ubiquitous, right? It's gonna be everywhere.
Yeah.
Punk, regal, stoic. Like she runs the gamut and the gambit of it all.
Everybody gets their version of Storm. That's the fun thing. Like I'm a punk Storm person. That's always been my favorite thing. But if you like her as the more, you know, we see her there on the right, the kind of more traditional 90s superhero, fine. If you like the more kind of regal queen look as she's often rocked, then that's good too.
I mean, look at these modern ones too in the middle. Like, oh shit, that's awesome, right? And I'll say, like in video games, I was a big Marvel Heroes where they would get you to spend more money to buy more costumes. Storm was always like, gimme, because they all were hits, right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, to me, it's Sinister puts up a good fight, but I'm going Storm.
Yeah, I'm actually with you. I think Storm is kind of in this matchup. No offense to Sinister, but at least she's kind of undeniable because there is a wider variety, and as we said, it's like I don't know. Every time they debut a new one, I'm like, yeah, I love that one now too. You know, it's just like it's just been hit after hit after hit with Storm, and like everything you said too about how iconic she is and how I think even people who don't know the X-Men know this character to a certain degree. She's great. Yeah.
All right, so Storm moves on. We've got our last two combatants, Mojo versus Domino. Now, we talked a lot last episode about Mojo. He doesn't have a wardrobe, right? But what he lacks in that is the extra, right? You can see here, look at the like belly roll with like hair or some sort of markings, maybe stretch marks, I don't know, going over his spider robot bottom, right? You've got his pulled back eyes from the machine that kind of holds his head up. You've got the wires going in. It's gross. It's gross.
He is the stuff of nightmares, which is what you want a villain to be. Like imagine, especially when you saw like X-Men comics and comics to a certain degree being for younger readers. As a child, imagine like how like scary this character must be, and just think of like if this character pops up in your vicinity in real life, it is the worst thing that's ever happened to you.
Yeah,
like that's and it's funny that what is interesting though too is like how often he is played as kind of slightly more comedic, given how scary he looks. But I think that also even adds to the comedy a little bit for him to be this repulsive, this disgusting, this horrifying, and sometimes be almost a complete buffoon. You know, so
look at this one on the left right here, right? So for our audio listeners, this is probably late 80s. Probably Mojo, just an extreme close-up of the wires into his head kind of acting as hair, his eyes getting pulled open, and then like pulled to the side. He's got spit drooling out as he screams, "I want my X-Men." Oh, it's so gross. And it's, yeah, you can feel it. You can almost smell it. It's gross. But it hasn't changed too much. Right? He hasn't hit that level of Sinister where they have to like, ooh, he's almost a main character now. He gets his own book. He gets his own, his own run in the spotlight. Right? He's always kind of been this, oh no, Mojo's showing up. He's going against Domino. Okay. Now here we get some more modern looks, right? The biggest thing I think is her patch, right? Her birthmark. I don't know if they've ever actually talked about it. Where she has this kind of like real pale white skin, but then a dark mark across her eye. And that's probably her most iconic part of it, right? She's someone who has never really been the main character, but always there, right? And then if you look at some of her older looks here, right, in the 90s era, big shoulder pads and pouches. Her hair has always kind of stayed short, which is relatively, I would say, less common for the characters in superheroes. They're mostly long, but she kind of has this shorter than shoulder length hair. What do you think?
It's just an interesting one because I would imagine, especially if anyone's watching this who didn't listen to the first part, they might be surprised that Domino's in the Elite Eight. And I think what kept winning out for us, and I'll bring it up again, is we talked about some of the elaborate nature of some of the other characters and why that the multitude of costumes they have and all the kind of visual kind of consideration put into the design of them. And I think for us, I think Domino's the kind of character who speaks to the idea of sometimes simplicity is the right way to go, right? Simplicity sells. And I think you and I were kind of both taken by the idea that it really does just come down to that patch, right? Like the fact that you hear the name and talk about a character's visual design is just so entrenched to the name. Like you just get it right away. Oh, Domino. And that also means she's just always instantly recognizable.
Yeah.
A fun character for, I think, people to cosplay. I think you see a lot of Domino because it's such a unique, instantly recognizable look. And yeah, and it does have, I think there is also something to be said for as like, maybe not the most flashy costumes, but they always do a really nice job of selling that kind of covert ops, secret agent kind of look with her. That again feeds to, if you like the character, that's what you want to see from her. You want to believe that this is like kind of a badass spy that can do all these kind of cool espionage missions. So yeah, and I do think, Joe, I just think there's a large part of it that is it really is about her from neck up. It is like that face and how kind of recognizable and iconic it is.
Which is usually the opposite of what you say about people. So it's a little shocking. But the other thing, so she's immediately recognizable, right? She's going to show up in a book, in a movie, in any sort of medium. You instantly know that's Domino, right? Which is pretty cool for a character. She also, I think we talked about this last time, but I'm not 100% sure. Artists always have to find a unique way to demonstrate her power, which is not visual at all. Like her power is that she has luck, right? Similar to Longshot, right? And so it's always kind of interesting to see how artists are going to figure that out. Putting her up against Mojo, though, my choice would be Mojo. I think Domino had a good run, but I think Mojo's just kind of like, oh, look at this. I mean, gross. That's really gross. And I think that for a villain really kind of is effective.
Yeah, I'm with you. Like Mojo, I wouldn't say, I don't know if anyone would consider Mojo like a top 5 X-Men villain, but if you're just talking about like imagery alone, and you're talking about like who looks like a villain, I think there's kind of a reason that, well, I was gonna say, I guess I'll backtrack this a little bit. I was gonna say, characters like Sabretooth, Juggernaut, Magneto, they've all had runs as heroes too. It's like, and when they do the hero run, they don't have to change their look too much because they have like visual looks and costumes that say like, no, they could go either way. Yeah, they can be heroic. Yeah, we don't have any heroic Mojo runs. And I was about to say, like, I don't even think you could do that. I think the most you could do with Mojo is what they've done with MODOK to make him kind of almost like a comedic anti-hero to a certain degree at sometimes. But even then, it's never like, they're not going to make MODOK either into a pure hero, because you just can't, because they do have a look that just screams supervillain. And so for me, that gives Mojo the edge over Domino, because as you said, as great as the patch on Domino's face is, she doesn't really have, I wouldn't say, an iconic costume. I think that is maybe like the downside. Yeah.
All right. So our stage is set for the next round. So we're going to have Cyclops versus Magik, right? And then we're going to have, Mojo versus Storm, right? So I'm just shifting some stuff around here. So let's go with, we'll go with Cyclops versus Magik to start with here. And so, oh wait, no, don't worry, I'm not trying to sneak my boy in. Cyclops. Okay, so Cyclops, we talked about it. Lots of looks, has to be, been around for 60 years, needs to have that iconic look, right? We've got the clean look of the more modern Magik that's here. Iconic visor versus iconic sword.
Yeah.
This is a tough one. I think I know who I'm leaning towards. Do you have an idea of who you're leaning towards for this?
I do, actually, yeah. I have an idea who I'm leaning towards. Yeah.
I think, to me, I'll go first here. I think the thing that sets this person apart is an item, and that item is the soul sword. I think the sword, whilst she doesn't have the years of Cyclops, you give her the chance in more pop culture, she could stand out more. I think to be so quickly iconic as she has, is impressive. I think they need to do a little bit more with her in the comics right now. I think we've talked about that in our Daisy Awards and in other things past, but I think the look, especially this one right in the middle of her in the teleporting with the soul sword next to her with the horns headdress on, it's great. It's a great look, and I would put her over Cyclops.
Yeah, Magik is who I'm leaning towards as well. It's actually much closer than you would think. I was kind of debating this in my head, because there is I was very taken with what you said about like the need to always have the visor present, and the different ways that's been kind of incorporated into the Cyclops costume, and how that does, like, he's just as iconic as anyone else we talked about, because everyone knows Cyclops because of that visor, right? The different ways you can do it. But with Magik, it kind of goes back to what I was saying about a couple things about like my love of just this kind of like this fantasy look. And also when I brought it up, I just brought it up kind of offhandedly, but I was thinking more about it. There should be something said to the fact that so many artists want to draw Magik, that you do see so many Magik prints and posters at a comic convention. She's kind of like a holdout of an era, the bad girl era of comics, the 90s into 2000s run, when we kind of late 90s or mid 90s into 2000s, when we got characters like Lady Death and Witchblade and She. Magik seems like to some degree is a relic of that, but that's what makes her interesting now, is she just like, look at these images, even especially like the one over on the right, the great J. Scott Campbell image of her. She looks like she's a character designed to be on badass comic book covers. I mean, I'm not a video game person, but like I know in the Final Fantasy series, there's the character with like the giant sword, right? And I always love that imagery. And then the video game series and the movie Monster Hunter has Mila Jovovich with like a giant sword. It's a sucker for a giant sword, and there's just something about her, like you want to see that character in these like really cool poses in like battle ready mode. And the silhouette of her with like the spikes on the shoulder pad and the earpieces. It's all good. Yeah.
It's interesting you bring up video games, because I was going to say, I mean, those are great examples. Monster Hunter has giant swords. Cloud from Final Fantasy VII, giant sword. But then I've been playing a lot of Elden Ring, which is all like wild weapons, and like she looks like a character that would be right in Elden Ring, which is more of a fantasy based thing, but like she fits, right? She fits different eras. So I'm comfortable with moving her into the finals. I think that's a good choice. Okay, our next final one is So I'm going the wrong way. Is Storm versus Mojo. So Storm, many iconic looks. The hair, the outfits, the way she carries herself versus Mojo, the villain of grotesqueness, right? To me, and I know you're leaning the same way, Storm has to win this, right? Storm has the look, right? She carries generation. She's carrying more on her shoulders than Mojo is, and she's nailing it, right? So
maybe it's also we both, I think you and I both see a little bit too much of ourselves in Mojo, and
it's like looking in a mirror.
Yeah, and I think when you think of it that way, I can't imagine myself, being a competitor to Storm in any manner.
That's why you don't go out on Halloween, because you're worried that people will say, "Oh, hey, great Mojo costume," and
no, you got that wrong. Halloween's the only day I go outside.
Listen, go back to our Halloween episode if you want to hear more about that. Okay, I think that's pretty easy, right?
Yeah, that's an easy one. Yeah, sorry, Mojo, but hey, you got to the final four, which I don't know if anybody was predicting at the beginning.
Big thing. All right, Storm versus Magik. Let's take a look at Storm here. Take it all in. The different looks, the different eras, the 90s, the 80s, the aughts, the aught 20s, the depowered look, the mohawk, the ponytail, the perm, the poofiness. She's got a lot going on. She's got a lot going on. Now, though, Magik, the weapons, the outfit, the silhouette, the fantasy-esque nature of it. She could be sprayed onto a van. This is tough. It
is tough. And I think too, and I don't know if you kind of agree with this, Joe, for me, this is like a battle of lifelong X-Men fan Trev versus like very recent, modern years X-Men fan Trev. Because you said Magik as a character who's really taken a spotlight in the last probably like the last decade or so, right? She's been kind of elevated in a larger way. And I've enjoyed almost all of that, and it's clear in the last 10 years that writers and artists alike have really taken to Magik. But that's combating against, since I got into the X-Men, Storm has always been around and always been iconic and always been awesome and has always had great designs, So it is tough, because it's like, where is my heart right now versus where is my heart often and always been? You want me to go first?
If you're comfortable, or I can go first as well. Whatever you want.
I think I'm comfortable. It's tough, but I think I have to go with Storm. I think for me, what's going to give Storm the edge here is we've seen a couple different Magik costumes, but she's pretty much been rocking one look, and I think they're going to stick with that look because people like it so much. Which is interesting, because Storm, I think people love all of her costumes, but they keep giving her new ones, and they're always excellent. And as you said, there's a Storm for every season. That's how confusing that sounds. But you have if you want to present her as more rebellious, you have the punk Storm. If you want her to look like a queen that would be involved in politics and state business, you have that look. You have superhero Storm. Just everything about her there. I think the variety of Storm gives her the edge here. And I have no problem actually choosing Storm in this. I think it's I mean, I shouldn't say that it's tough, but I think she's kind of the obvious winner for that reason. It's the variety.
So I'm going to say one word and why this helps me choose the winner. And that is Mohawk. I think there is a non-zero number of people who, if you said, if you did word association and you said Mohawk, there would be, some people would say biker, some people would say punk, but some people,
Mr. T.
Some people, though, in just walking down the street, would say Storm. Like that, she has so many iconic looks, but I think Mohawk Storm has made it to that next level, right? I think we didn't even talk about her earrings, the Storm earrings that she, you could see on a couple of these different ones here, right? Love it, right? It's perfect. I think Magik has a good run. I think Magik is a very stylish character and has a great design, but I think Storm just is another step up. Another step up. So
yeah,
but that's why we do the tournaments, right? Because Storm
Yeah.
could have been, or, had a big challenge with Mr. Sinister. She could have lost from them or lost in an earlier round. So to me, congratulations, Storm.
I was actually, I have to say, I
year.
was kind of disappointed that even I think we both went with our gut, went with our heart, and gave Magik the win over Cyclops. But there was a part of me was hoping it was going to come down to Cyclops versus Storm.
Yeah,
a classic matchup, of course.
Yeah, yeah. That's But hey, listen, we do this. We're here to like be honorable, right? And we can't just do it for the matchups. This is not for the ratings. This is not for Sweeps Week. This is for, whatever this is. Podcast, video podcast. Congratulations to Storm. I think she pulled some daisies this year too. So I mean, pulling a daisy. That's like, we should get that trending. Like when you win a daisy award, our yearly awards, for those who don't know, you should be called pulling a daisy.
Pulling a daisy, yeah. Has she also won a previous Mutant March Madness?
Maybe.
Yeah.
We need our historian to look that up.
Yeah.
But there you have it. Congratulations, Storm. But you know what? I'm gonna give a shout out to all top 8. Cyclops, Warlock, Magik, Cable, Sinister, Mojo, Domino, and Storm. Hey, that's a great run, especially for Domino, Mojo, Warlock to get up there.
Yeah.
It's pretty good. Warlock did make top 4 last year though, too, of characters who hadn't appeared in movies yet. So I mean, it's hard to go against the Regent of Soul, but
no, I think like I said, definitely some surprises in that top 8. But when you think of the logic we used, I think they were, we can defend those surprises to a certain degree,
and we will.
And we will. We'll have to
in
a court of law where we're going to have to bring it up.
Yeah. You have a lawyer though, right?
Oh yeah.
And they're real, right? This is not a cosplay ace attorney.
Sure. Phoenix, right?
If it's you who shows up with like a fake top hat or a real Bono's top hat, I'm gonna be mad because I can't go to jail over this. I can't for other stuff. So there you have it. There's another madness. So this has been a kind of a fun experiment for us. Leave us some feedback of what you liked, didn't like. Even if you're an audio listener, if you're like, because maybe going forward we could do both. So let us know how you feel. But before we sign off, I want to make sure, is there anything else you've been doing?
I was just thinking when you said leave us feedback about what you liked and didn't like, unless your feedback is we just didn't like your faces.
That would be
like, because there's not too much we can do about that.
It's kind of
anything else it's been pretty busy for me with school stuff recently, so I haven't had time to dive. Like I said, I would give a very, very high, like highest of all recommendations to Everything Everywhere All at Once. That's kind of been my main obsession in recent days.
I need to see it. I want to go. My wedding anniversary is coming up, so I'm hoping to like do dinner and a movie. And maybe invite my wife along too if she wants to come.
Cool.
So I don't know. I haven't done anything. I've been playing video games. That's about it in my free time and sleeping a lot. So that's about it. Wow, we're boring.
Have you beaten Elden Ring? Is that like a game? Is that like a?
You can beat it. Yes,
you can beat it. Okay.
So I'm about like 85 hours in, and no, I haven't. And right now I'm kind of actually stuck because I'm stuck on a very, very frustrating boss, and I don't know if I have it in me to get good.
Keep going.
Yeah. It is an optional boss, but I'm almost like dug my heels in too far. And my friend beat it, and he was like, "Hey, bro, come help you out." And then we spent like 2 hours together trying to beat it because you can co-op kind of. No, we got smoked. So I need a third person to come bail me out. So, but I haven't. But it's fun. It's a hell of a game. It's all the hype around video games. Justified.
Cool.
So. Right. Okay, that's it. Thanks for listening and watching.
And we'll be back soon with something. Well, we'll talk about Doctor Strange.
We'll probably talk Doctor Strange. Yeah. Okay.
All right.
Ciao, everybody.